welcome back to Lex Reads. So, in today's Becoming a Black Book Collector video, we are talking about the Black elite. Now, when I tell you this time in our history is beyond fascinating, and a lot of people, I'm generalizing, a lot of people like to kind of diminish it and, not talk about it. But we had a lot of Black people that had businesses, that were entrepreneurs, lawyers, dentists, doctors. I mean, everything, okay? And I wanted to dig and excavate when it came to this time in history. And I have found people that I have never heard of. And when I tell you, I just scratched the surface. And y'all know, when I learn about a certain subject, I get the books along with it. And that's what I did. And I focused on maybe one or two books, mainly the one book that I got a lot of information from. And that book was Black Fortunes by Shumari Willis. I think I'm saying his name right. It says it's a story of the first 6 African Americans who survived slavery and became millionaires. One person in this book fascinated me like no other, and I cannot wait to share it with you guys. Okay, so this was the main one that I focused on, but just backstory. The reason why I actually wanted to learn about this subject is back in January 2022, HBO premiered a show called The Gilded Age, and it is written and produced by Julian Fellows. He did Downton Abbey. And The Gilded Age, that's from, well, I got my notes, y'all. Gotta have my notes. Like 1877 to 1896. And in that series, they focus on the Black elite. And I was so fascinated because when you do think about like the 1900s, especially when it comes to Blacks, you think about like slavery. And slavery ended in 1865. Well, it was supposed to, but it was abolished in 1865, but you still have people that was owning slaves and stuff. But yeah, but I was so fascinated that they shined light on the Black elite. The character that was Black, her name was Peggy, and Peggy was a college educated, woman, and her father was a former slave, and he became a pharmacist. And during like Gilded Age and the Reconstruction Age, Blacks were really active in like pharmacy. And so he owned the pharmacy. And then she was a writer, and her dad wanted her to, go in the family business. And she's like, I don't want to do that. I want to be a writer.
And stay in your own home and work in the drugstore with me.
Father, it's what I want to do.
I own the pharmacy, which I plan to pass down to you.
Also started watching some behind the scenes of that television show, and one of the writers said that she said, you can't tell a story about the Gilded Age without telling the story of the Black elite. And she's totally right, because again, so many Blacks were so successful, and I mean, they became millionaires, and a lot of concepts, inventions, and businesses we still use today. So my curiosity started with the Gilded Age. But most recently, I read another book that shined kind of light on the Black elite, and that was The House of Eve by Sadiqa Johnson. Y'all know, fangirling about this. I don't know how many times I've talked about this woman. Girl. One of the characters, Eleanor, she marries into a family that is from the Black elite. And she struggles with it because she is from a little town in Ohio and didn't come from nothing, don't have a name. The family that she marries into, it's all about that last name. It's all about color. And it's all about keeping that circle tight knit. In Sadiqa's author notes, she talked about some books that she had researched that talked about the Black elite. And one of the books was Our Kind of People, which I just started it. This is by Lawrence Otis Graham. And I realized when I looked at the book, this actually was a TV series that was on Fox. And I did not watch it, but I do remember my sister, she was like, you have to watch it because it was really good. It only had 1 season. I'll pop up a picture of it, but I think after dabbling into this, I do want to see what it's about. But yeah, I literally just started this. But in this, it talks about, Black sororities, clubs, marrying into the right family, talks about, skin complexions and all of that. So yeah, this was the book that she talked about. But this book, let's go back to this book. Okay. So, like I stated, it was 6 people that this author had focused on. The first person is Mary Ellen Pleasant. Some people say that she was a millionaire before Madam C.J. Walker, but he stated something that I highlighted. He said, Madam C.J. Walker was known as the first Black millionaire not because she was the first to achieve wealth, was far from the first, but because she was one of the first African Americans to flaunt and claim her wealth openly and honestly. Mary Pleasant, how she got her money was very fascinating. She worked for a wealthy businessman, and she would overhear some of the men, talk about their investments and things like that. And by her doing that, she owned numerous laundry businesses, and she invested in many real estates, made over $30 million. Just from her overhearing some of those businessmen talk about how to invest and stuff like that, she was able to get her coins, okay? And she had again, like laundry mats basically. This got me right here. She was a free Black woman who was raised in New England during the whaling boom of the 1830s and 1840s that inspired Herman Melville's first famous work, Moby Dick. She inspired Moby Dick. Like, that's just amazing to me. The like whaling boom they're talking about. Whaling oil was like hot commodity in like the early 19th century, and it actually was worth more, they said, than cotton. So that was Mary. The second person is Robert Reed Church. He was born a plantation slave during the peak of the cotton trade, the product of a wealthy white steamboat captain and his Black concubine. He escaped slavery during the Civil War and became one of the largest landowners in Memphis. Okay. Then we have Annie Molen, the daughter of slaves. She was abandoned at an early age. She invented a number of Black hair products, which was later built into America's largest Black hair brand. Okay. Then next is O.W. Garley. He was a school teacher, and it says, what did he do? He built the all-Black neighborhood in Tulsa, Oklahoma called Greenwood, which became known as the Black Wall Street. But it was destroyed by a white mob in 1921 during the Tulsa race riots. You had a Black man that created a whole town. My goodness. And lastly, this woman fascinated me, Lord, was Hannah Ellis. She was a Black mistress to a white New York millionaire who heaped money on her. She used his gifts to decorate her mansion to look like Cleopatra. And her wealth and affair with a white man was revealed. An angry mob set upon her house and she was arrested. So because she had her little friend, she owned 3 properties in New York in addition to her main house. She also had a chauffeur, she had a cook, girl, diamonds, pearls, everything. What her and her lover did was really smart. So the buildings that he basically gave to her, she turned them into boarding homes. So she was able to collect her wealth like that, and it continued to grow. But those boarding homes, you have to be on a certain type of level, meaning, your job status. You have to obviously have, some money. Also, too, you couldn't be my color, basically, in those homes. You have to be light bright. Another thing with her is clearly, she was Black, but she passed as Cuban or Sicilian. And they said Hannah was a mess. Okay. Hannah was hot tempered. And one thing that he pointed out in the book is she knew that there was obviously baggage of being Black, and she didn't like the fact that her skin was kind of olive. So she tried to, do the bleaching creams. That didn't work. They said one time she tried to straighten her hair, and her stylist basically told her, well, shave it all off. And there's a hair treatment that you can do and it'll grow back, girl. And she did that, and they said it was just not, clearly it did not work. Also too, she would be among the first people to have like plastic surgery, basically like a nose job. She didn't like the bridge of her nose. So what they would do is they would basically like pack wax in your like the bridge of the nose, but it had to be done on a monthly basis, and the side effects is you couldn't really breathe that well. But her thing is, I want to look as white as possible. What happened to her in the end of her life is her white lover basically sued her, and he did that because when they discovered that a white man had given her all that wealth and did all of that, he was an older white man, and it was kind of like he was not brainwashed, but it was like, you just have to do that. You know, he did that to kind of cover up a little bit his situation, but he ended up suing her, saying that she like blackmailed him. It went to trial. He act like he didn't remember the things that, you know, went on, and he was like, I don't remember having a relationship with her, I don't remember giving her any money, I don't remember any of that. So they dismissed the case. And after the trial was over, literally the day of the trial, she went back home and she hired a reporter to, you know, basically tell her side of the story. I don't blame the poor old man at all, she told the reporter. I know he was forced to bring the suit against me, and he had no choice in the matter of sending out the warrant for my arrest. He never wanted to make trouble for himself. I never did anything wrong taking the money which he gave me. It's all nonsense to talk of me having blackmailed him, as he plainly showed himself this afternoon when he refused to say that I extorted money from him by threats. So yeah, he gave her that money. After the trial and stuff like that, it says a few days later, notes were slipped under the door of the white families in the buildings. The note told them to vacate their homes within 24 hours, and that in the future, the dwellings would only be rented to respectable colored families. She claimed she didn't know that that was happening. She said she did not have any part of the building purchases or the evictions. She had indeed been investing in Harlem with a handful of other powerful African Americans. So basically, after that trial, she ended up, you know, coming with the blacks, and they really did heavily invest in turning that white, you know, neighborhood and buildings, housing, moving black people in there. Hannah knew. I don't believe that. Hannah knew. Her thing is, I'm getting back at y'all, okay? Y'all caused all that trouble. I'm getting back at y'all. And that's exactly what she did. But with the end of her life, no one really knows when she died. What she did is she packed out of Harlem and she moved to Paris with her and her butler or chauffeur. And we don't know, you know, what happened. Some people say she lived to old age. Some people say she died in Paris, you know, few years after she arrived. Her story, again, is so fascinating. I had never known that woman. Cannot get over Hannah. All right. So with the Black elite, a lot of Black people, they migrated mainly to Brooklyn. And again, the occupations, they were doctors, pharmacists, they were into politics, scientists, lawyers, journalists. Education was like a main factor. Also, colorism was a main factor. Clearly, we know that. But I read this quote, and I wanted to read it to you guys. It said, building wealth for ourselves through being a scientist or lawyer or entrepreneur, as opposed to being a singer or athlete or, you know, an entertainment business. And I always think about that part of that song that J. Cole January 28th. But when I read that quote, I thought about that because, you know, sometimes when you think about blacks, how they have all this wealth, is because, you know, entertainment basically business. And they're like, no, back in, you know, these times, it was all about education. It was all about last names. And again, they had, you know, the traditional occupations such as a lawyer or a dentist or, you know, entrepreneur. So yeah, I thought that was really interesting. So some leaders during that time were like Ida B. Wells, Frederick Douglass, Booker T. Washington, W. Du Bois. So of course, we have the, you know, those books. So Narrative of Frederick Douglass, Booker T. Washington, Up from Slavery, Ida B. Wells, The Light of the Truth. She was a journalist. She actually, before Rosa Parks, she was the one that refused to get off of the train. So yes, Du Bois, like I said, Soul of Black Folk. Of course, we know Booker T, we know W. Du Bois, we know Ida B. Wells. But there are some books during that time, and also some books that talk about, you know, the Black elite that I want to share with you. And the first is The Colored Girl Beautiful by Emma Eliza Hinckley. This is basically a guide to Black women on how to be a woman, you know, how to be ladylike. And this was published in 1916. Another person that I want to highlight is Anna Julia Cooper. Now, this is really good. You guys know I always love the Penguin Classic editions because this has letters from W. Du Bois to her. It has essays. It also has a little bit of poetry. Now, she's known for this, A Voice from the South. This also has that in here. And this basically, she was like almost like the first feminist. And she was the fourth person, I believe, to graduate from Harvard, I believe. But yeah, this is just basically talks about, you know, education and Blacks really, you know, heavily being involved in that. Also Blacks just being aware of, you know, politics and just everything like that. And this was published in 1892. Okay, this is William Monroe Trotter, Black Radical. This is by Carrie K. Greenwich. Now, he was a journalist, and also too, he was, just like the title says, he was a radical. So he was against Booker T. Washington's philosophy and W. Du Bois's philosophy. He was more like a Marcus Garvey, and Marcus Garvey is, girl, beyond radical. But he actually, let's see, I have my notes here for him. He wrote and founded the Boston Guardian in 1901. And with him, he actually got his degree from Harvard, so brilliant. But he got it in international banking. And because of his race, he couldn't work in banking. So he ended up working for his dad in real estate. And then he started to write, and he, you know, founded the Boston Guardian. And that was a newspaper that was really heavily influenced by, you know, political views, you know, made Black people aware of just what they could do and what they should do. Again, radical, radical, radical. Yeah, a lot of people don't know him. So I thought his life was really interesting. Okay, and I need to put this actually in my folder. You guys know I have my binder. And then another book that actually is inspired by a real life person. Well, first, the book is The Davenports by Crystal Marquis. This actually it was advanced reader copy. This is a YA book, but it actually is inspired by C.R. Patterson and Sons. It's the first African-American car company founded by Frederick Douglass Patterson. And I know this, let's see, is talking about, I haven't read this yet, the Davenport Carriage Company. So yeah, and I know it's about I think three daughters or two daughters, and I think one of the like elite girls, she ends up falling in love with, I believe, is it an employer? Or the best friend ends up no, I know what it is. Their childhood like maid ends up falling for one of the brothers, which is a Davenport, and clearly he comes from wealth. So it's like, you know, clearly that's a no-no. Okay, the maid, you know, kicking it with the elite brother. So that does sound interesting, but I thought it was real neat that she had, you know, inspired this book by like a real life family and company, because I had never heard of C.R. Patterson and Sons. I wrote that down because I want to learn a little bit more about that company and just, you know, see what happened to it. Okay, and then another book, which it's actually an autobiography. It is Negro Land by Margot Jefferson. Now, this actually is talking about, says Margot was born in 1947 into the upper crust Black Chicago family. Her father was a physician. Her mother was a socialite. I call it Negro Land because I still find Negro a word of wonders, glorious, and trouble. And this, it talks about the social clubs, it talks about the fraternities, networks, colorism, clearly, and it also talks about hair texture. That's a topic of discussion, I would say, when it comes to Black people. Yes. And then one book that I don't have that I really want to get is The Original Black Elite. This is by Elizabeth Dowling Taylor. Now I know she is a white author, but this is talking about Daniel Murray, and he was an assistant library at the Library of Congress, and he was the second black person to work in the library. Never heard of him, so I do want to get that book and see what it's about. And doing my research, I noticed a lot of schools that black elite people attended were Oberlin, Fisk, Harvard, and Yale. And then a lot of the demographic was in Washington, D.C., and also in like New York, but mainly in Harlem and Brooklyn, but mainly like Washington, D.C. That was like where a lot of black elites moved to. You know what? I just thought about another book that talks about like the black elite, and it's in Martha's Vineyard. Actually, is The Wedding by Dorothy West. It's right here. But yeah, that's another book that you could add on your list if you want to know about like upper class black people. And I believe that book is about a black girl that gets married to a white man. And that also is a movie too. I haven't read the book. I need to read that book. And I've seen parts of the movie. Actually, not parts. I've seen that movie before. It's just been years ago. And that has Halle Berry and Lynn Whitfield. They're like the main stars in that movie. But yeah, that's a book that you could add on the list. Now, lastly, I want to talk about some people that are still in the realm of, lesser known and things of that nature. So first is Garrett Morgan. Now, Garrett Morgan, he was an inventor. And this man, girl, he invented the traffic light, gas mask, and chemical hair processing and straightening solution. So we have him to thank, okay? Another engineer is a man named Elijah McCoy. Now, he is Canadian, and he invented lubrication system for steam engines. So, yes, he was a pioneer. And then, which this man gets me, Lewis Lattimore, and they actually talk about Lewis Lattimore in The Gilded Age. Thomas Edison hired Lewis because Lewis actually improved wires in your light bulb. So when you have a light bulb, look at like the wires. He's the one that improved that. And Edison hired him and was like, oh, we need to get him on board. Of course, he didn't get any recognition or anything like that. He also improved the air conditioning and toilet system for railroad cars. He did that too. So yeah, again, when you look at a light bulb, the wires, think Lewis. So next, let's go to the doctors and physicians. Charles Drew. He discovered the methods for long-lasting storage of blood plasma, and he organized blood banks. Now, the sad thing about him, he had an untimely death. He actually died in a car crash, and it's said, they haven't really confirmed it. It's kind of like a theory, but they said that he could have lived, but because he was colored, they didn't transport him to, obviously, the white hospitals that had all the equipment and had the blood transfusions and things like that. They sent him to the colored hospital. Because of that, they ran out of time because they wasted all that time, saying, well, he can't go to the white hospital. And they didn't have, it was too late to do a blood transfusion. And the sad part about it is he contributed to blood banks. So the thing that he basically contributed to, he couldn't even use. So it was really, really sad. And I know in the House of Eve, they do talk about him because one of the characters, Ruby, she wanted to be a doctor. Okay. And then lastly, Daniel Hill Williams. He founded a hospital, Providence Hospital, in 1891. And he's credited for the first successful heart surgery. Now, there had been many doctors that didn't get it right, and Daniel got it right. Okay, the list goes on and on and on and on, okay, of doctors and scientists and philosophers and lawyers and attorneys and everything. There's so many things that Black people have discovered, and again, no one knows about, like tampons. Black woman invented that. What's another? A pastry fork, the improvement of an elevator, potato chips. Oh, what is another one that got me? Like the Playboy bunny costume, a black woman designed that. Jackie Kennedy's wedding dress, a black woman designed that. uh I mean, girl, it's so much that we have done. I love this hobby that I've taken up because I have spent so many hours just like clicking and looking up things, because it's like I look up one thing and then it relates to another thing, and it's like, Lord, stuff I did not learn in high school, nor did I learn in college. I always say it baffles me because my major was in sociology, and who is a black sociologist? W. Du Bois, right? All the courses that I took those 4 years didn't even breath W. Du Bois. They always talked about Karl Marx. You have a black sociologist, and you're not gonna talk about W. Du Bois and everything that he has contributed, and he just didn't contribute to black society and black America and black history. He contributed to blacks and whites. I thought about that one day, like, girl, I did not learn about him. I had to learn about him on my own merit. Girl, okay. So things like that, it makes you think. Also, too, how a lot of black people, they contributed to, political aspect. Abraham Lincoln actually sought out a lot of information and advice from Sojourner Truth. I know he did talk to Frederick Douglass, but like a woman, Sojourner Truth, he literally would actually consult with her when it came to politics and things like that, because of course they always want to give him the praise about him ending slavery. No, he was trying to preserve the Union. I talked about that in my last episode of Becoming a Black Book Collector, about slave narratives and things like that. So yeah, I think that is it when it comes to the Black elite so far, because again, like I said, I scratched the surface. There is a lot of people that I have again discovered, and I'm flabbergasted every time. Always flabbergasted. So yeah, guys, that's it when it comes to Black elite. So yeah, guys, I'll be back with more Black books. Bye.